Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Gita Wisdom with Lakshmi. April 1st. Time's flying. Hey,
Hey,
April 1st, 7 p.m., 2025. Welcome all. Joshua,
nice to
Jai
be here.
Krishna, Joanna. Hi, Trish. How are you doing? And who do we have over here? Juggernaut?
Jag, that's my friend Jag. Yeah,
Oh, okay. Welcome, all of you. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. We're continuing our journey through through the Bhagavad Gita first chapter, and I'm happy that you're all able to join with me. I wanted to remind you that if for some reason you're not able to make it on a Tuesday night due to schedule conflict, um, it's being recorded and posted to my YouTube page. And you have to go to Larry Puglisi. And there's a Larry Puglisi music, not that one. It's the other Larry Puglisi. And it'll have all the classes thus far, as well as I think it'll also my kirtans are on there too. So just keep that in mind, for future reference. Okay.
thank you. Thank you.
Does anyone have any question they would like to ask before we get started? Anyone that has any pressing question from previous? Okay, so we'll begin where we left off. Actually, I'll start. This is chapter one, Arjuna Vishada Yoga. Arjuna Vishada Yoga means Arjuna's dejection, how Arjuna is not feeling good about his involvement in this battle, even though he is a first-class warrior. In fact, in relationship to all the other warriors, Arjuna is considered the topmost warrior. So it's quite unnatural for him to feel dejected about fighting. According to the Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavad Gita has one of the first personality indexes um, over 5,000 years ago. Krishna describes in the fourth chapter, Chaturvarnam Maya Shrishtam Gunakarma Vibhagasaha. He says there's four basic natures that are there. And this is in relationship also to the gunas. If any of you are familiar with the gunas, which is also very elaborately described in the Bhagavad Gita, the 14th chapter and the 18th chapter of the Gita. But basically, it talks about how the elements around us, the material energy around us, has a very profound effect on our psychophysical nature. And when these gunas, sattva gun, rajagun, and tamagun, or, excuse me, sattva means goodness, literally or loosely translated, goodness or beingness. A nice definition for sattva gun is beingness, as opposed to doingness. Doingness would be more rajagun. That means, the inclination to be active, to be creative. Beingness means the inclination to understand the nature of one's existence. And also, another indication of sattvagun would be knowledge, to have a inclination towards knowledge. And when we talk about knowledge, we're not talking about college degrees. We're talking about the understanding of the distinction between matter and spirit, understanding my various dimensions of existence. My dimension of existence, meaning, as we discussed before, the dimension of the body, the dimension of existence of the sensory dimension, the mental dimension, the intellectual dimension, and the egoistic dimension of our existence. Those are all under the banner of material nature, the material nature. And then the concluding dimension of our existence, which Bhagavad Gita gets into very elaborately, is the spiritual dimension of our existence. So these gunas are in reference to the material nature that we are in, operating under those dimensions of body, senses, mind, intellect, and ego, that dimension, and also the additional dimension of our spiritual dimension of existence. Krishna gets into it very nicely in the second chapter when he talks about that. He talks about the distinction between matter and spirit. He points out in various verses what is our spiritual dimension? What does that look like? What does that feel like as opposed to the material dimension of our existence? And it's according to the Gita, it's important that we understand those distinctions because on one hand, the Gita wants us to function in this material world, but functioning does not mean absorbed or captured in the material existence. That we can see the distinction between our material involvement and also the spiritual involvement that's there. So the Gita really wants us to understand the distinction between the two so that we don't get trapped or shackled by material existence. That that shackling, that's called karma bandhana. That means action. Karma is action, and bandhana means action that binds us to the material world, as opposed to action that liberates us from the shackles of the material world. So all these things are very, very important, and understanding the gunas and their interactions are really important. And that's how we know the personality index. So when one is predominantly influenced, their psychophysical nature is predominantly influenced by goodness, then Krishna says in the Gita that's more of a Brahminical um, tendency, tendency towards knowledge, tendency towards teaching, a tendency towards spirituality, as opposed to the Rajagun or passion is a tendency to do or to interact within this material world and gives very clear outline. So those that are influenced predominantly by goodness, they're considered more Brahman, more um, absorbed in or attracted to the spirit. Brahman is the spiritual energy, more attracted to that and using life for that, as opposed to the Raja or the passion, action, doing, managing, involving. That's called the Kshatriya. Now, the reason I mention that is because the warriors that we are being introduced to in the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita are predominantly, they're all warriors, they're all Kshatriyas. Kshatriya or Kshatrayate means to protect others from harm. So their duty and their inclination is to be able to manage within this material realm, and most kings or leaders have this kind of inclination. So when we are being introduced to the various personalities in the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, most of them are Kshatriyas, or most of them are influenced by Rajagun or passion, and they are the warriors, they are the managers of society. The third is what's called the Vaishya, and the Vaishya means influenced by Raja or passion, but also influenced by Tamagun. There's a dual influence there. And that's one who is more inclined to do business, agriculture, and that kind mercantilistic activities. And then the fourth is called Sudra, and the Sudra is inclined to be the service to humanity. And so those are the four personality types, as defined in the Bhagavad Gita, and the personalities that we're getting introduced to: Arjuna, Duryodhan, Bhishma, Bhima, all these names that we're coming across in the first chapter. They're all Kshatriyas for the most part. There are only a couple of Brahmins. Because it's really not the inclination of the Brahmin to fight. It's more the inclination of the Brahmin to teach and to educate oneself as well as educate others. But we have the particular personalities, Dronacharya, that name has already been mentioned, and we discussed about it in our last class. Dronacharya is a Brahmin. And the unique feature of Dronacharya is he's a Brahmin who teaches warfare. So he's the guru, the warfare guru, the martial arts guru of all these Kshatriyas that we are hearing about. Dronacharya, Duryodhan, Arjuna, Bhima, all these names that are coming up in the first, I guess, the first 19 verses of the Bhagavad Gita, and I've been speaking about a little bit during the previous lectures. All these names that were coming up are warriors that have been trained by Dronacharya on both sides of the battlefield. All been trained by Dronacharya. He's kind of the martial arts guru for all of these warriors. So it's a little unusual that he's in that position. Number one, that he's fighting, and number two, that he has connection with warriors on both sides of the fence here. That makes it very difficult for him. And then there's two other Brahmins, Dronacharya's son, Ashvatthama, and then Kripacharya. Now, those names they're only mentioned, I think, once or twice because Duryodhan is trying to influence Dronacharya to really, really want to fight. So that's a little bit of the background that we've gone if you're joining for the first time. We have two sets of dialogue in the Bhagavad Gita I've mentioned before. The first dialogue is the secondary set, and that's between Dhritarashtra, who is the interim king of the Kuru dynasty, and Sanjaya, who's his teacher. That's the secondary dialogue. The primary dialogue comes up, and that's between the majority of the rest of the Gita, between the majority of the dialogue between Krishna, who does most of the speaking, most of the instructing, to Arjuna, who does the listening and asking of questions. Arjuna asks a series of questions throughout the remainder of the Bhagavad Gita that Krishna is addressing. And that's what we get. That is what the Bhagavad Gita is about. It's a question and answer session between guru and student. Dhritarashtra, the king, is the student of Sanjaya. That's the secondary dialogue. And Krishna and Arjuna is the primary dialogue, and Krishna is serving as Arjuna's teacher, as Arjuna's guru, so to speak, because he's asked. Krishna and Arjuna are very, very close friends. But there's a point that we arrive at where Arjuna asks Krishna, please be my teacher, help me dispel this delusion that I'm in, the dejection that I'm feeling. And we could see in terms of our own situation, what do we normally do when we're feeling a little sad or dejected or a little down? what is the normal course of events that happens for us in your own life? What do you normally do? Do you just ride it out?
Mm.
You just go with it, or what normally happens? Who can tell me when you're
Reach
in a
out, reach
mood
out
of
to a friend.
dejection or depression? Josh?
Reach, reach out to a friend.
Yeah, yeah, we reach out. We reach out. I mean, according to the Nectar of Instruction, which is a book on instructions in how to practice bhakti yoga. There's a verse there that says, amongst the practitioners of bhakti, there are six loving exchanges. There's six ways that we exchange love in the bhakti yoga tradition. And two of those are to reach out when in need and to be there for someone that's in need. That's to hear in confidence and to speak in confidence. Another two is to give gifts and to receive gifts. And these are all exchanges of love, according to the Bhakti Yoga. So, and to give food and to receive food. But specifically in the Bhakti Yoga tradition, the word that's used is prasadam, because prasadam is one who's a practitioner of bhakti doesn't eat food without first offering in gratitude to God. And then it's called prasadam, or God's mercy. So those are the six loving exchanges. So that's what's going on here in terms of Arjuna. When he feels dejected, the whole first chapter, it's leading up to Arjuna's dejection and his reasons for feeling depressed, for this dejection. That leads us up to around the 22nd or third verse, and then all the way through the end, we get all the reasons why Arjuna, who is your consummate warrior, who has never backed down from battle, who has actually never lost a battle, and here, very unusual to Arjuna, he's saying, I don't know if I should fight this war. So we're getting a lead up to that conclusion that Arjuna comes to. And then in the second chapter, beginning of the second chapter, Arjuna realizes in his dejection, he realizes he needs a confidant. And of course, Krishna is his confidant, and he begins to speak. So he takes him on as his guru, as his teacher. So we're on the verse. I'm going to read over 11, which we concluded with in our last session, and just to give you a starting point. This is text 11 of the Bhagavad Gita. All of you must now give full support to Grandfather Bhishma as you stand at your respective strategic points of entrance into the phalanx of the army. Now, two things to note about this verse. All of you must give full support to Bhishma. Now, Bhishma, his very name means B, B-H-I in Sanskrit, the root of Sanskrit, means terrifying. So there's two personalities that have this root, this Sanskrit root in their name, terrifying. And one is on one side and the other is on the other side. So there's Bhishma, who is considered the grandsire of the entire dynasty. Remember, the entire dynasty includes both sides. It's a fratricidal war here. You have the Pandavas, who are on one side, and they're the sons of Pandu, the former emperor who died prematurely. And then on the other side, you have Duryodhan, who's the son of Dhritarashtra, and he's the protagonist. He's the one that's really pushing for this war because he is not in line to be the emperor, but he wants to be the emperor, and he wants to get rid of his competitors, who are actually the heirs. The true heirs are the personalities that he is trying to get rid of, the Pandavas, the five brothers. And in that five brothers is Arjuna, who's speaking with Krishna, and he's one of the military commanders. The other commander of the Pandava army is Bhima, and he also has the B in his name. So Bhishma means one who took a terrifying vow. That's why he got the name. The devatas or the demigods gave him that name when he took a vow that was so inconceivable for a warrior to take, and that was celibacy. Bhishma took on a vow of lifelong celibacy for to help his father uh, obtain the woman that his father wanted to marry. So he took on this vow, and therefore his name was Devarata. And then the demigods, when he took on that vow, see, vow in our generation, in our time, is not so serious. I think statistically, New Year's, when one takes a New Year's vow, New Year's Eve vow, statistically, most people break their vow in 2 weeks. And they
Alexa,
last
turn
2
on
weeks.
bedroom.
What's that? Someone said something, I missed it. But in any case, it's not a vow like that. If you go on a diet, you last a couple of months, or, you know, it's not in this particular time period when someone noble of birth, and particularly the Kshatriyas, the warriors, took a vow. They kept that vow by hook or by crook. They kept that vow. So Bhishma got his name, the terrifying vow, and Bhima got his name, one who is terrifying in battle, because when he took a vow, he kept it, and he did take a vow, and that vow was to kill all of the brothers of Duryodhan. Duryodhan is the main protagonist on the opposing side, and Duryodhan has 99 brothers. So there's 100 brothers. So when they offended and manipulated, particularly Duryodhan, to try to uh, steal the position away from the Pandava brothers, they did all kinds of dastardly things to do that. So when they did that, Bhima took a vow that you will pay for what you're doing. So he vowed to kill all 100 brothers, and in one particular case, one of the brothers, Dushashana, who insulted the wife of Bhima, he said, "I'll not only kill you, but I'll tear your heart out right from your chest and drink your blood." So Duryodhan knew that Bhima, who is a fierce warrior, he knew that he took those vows. So he was afraid of Bhima. And that's why in this particular section, Duryodhan, we're getting the distinction of mindsets between one who's approaching a dilemma materialistically, and that's Duryodhan, by material calculations. He's trying to arrange for him to win the battle, as opposed to Arjuna, who approaches his dilemma, the war that he has to fight, the people that he has to fight against, which are many of them are his relatives or his friends or his teachers. Arjuna approaches it in a very noble, spiritual way. Duryodhan approaches the same dilemma, how to defeat a very powerful opposing army, in a very materialistic way. So what he's doing in these verses, what we're getting him doing, is he's your classic diplomat. He's assessing what problems he's going to face, the problems that he's going to face in this war. So what he assesses, the problem that he's going to face is two of his very powerful warriors, Drona, the martial arts guru, and Bhishma, the commander in chief of his army, have attachments to the Pandava boys, to the Pandava brothers. And so he's afraid, due to their attachments, Drona's attachment to the five Pandavas and Bhishma's attachment to the five Pandavas, that these two very powerful and very necessary components for victory, they're not going to fight to their hardest, their fiercest, because of this attachment. So he's surmising this. He's assessing the situation. So he's trying to figure out how he can rile up both Dronacharya and Bhishma. So with Drona, he has mentioned Drona's enemy on the other side, King Drupada, one of the allies for the Pandavas. And there has been some bad blood between King Drupada and Drona. So he mentions, hey, your enemy, your fierce enemy is on the other side. And he's trying to get Dronacharya free from his attachment and get fully committed to the battle, as he's trying to do that with Bhishma. See, because he knows the Pandavas, even though they have less warriors, he knows that those that are fighting for the Pandavas are doing so out of commitment to the Pandavas, appreciation for their nobleness, for their willingness to help those in trouble. So he sees, and that's why he mentions 17 names on Arjuna's side, because he's saying, oh, these are powerful warriors, but most importantly, they're committed. They're powerful warriors. They're of the caliber of warrior of Arjuna and Bhima, but they're also committed. They're not clouded or jaded by affection for anyone on the other side. Whereas Duryodhana is afraid that Drona and Bhishma, his two very, very important generals and warriors, will be clouded or jaded by their sentimentality for the five Pandavas. So what we have here now is Duryodhana trying to incite Dronacharya to battle, trying to incite Bhishma to battle by mentioning certain things to kind of get under their skin and to incite them to fight. Now I'm going to stop there to ask if there's anything that needs clarification. I know there are a lot of names here, and to get clear who's who in the zoo, who's on what side, etc., is might be a little bit difficult. But I'm here for you. That's why I'm here for you. So if anyone at this juncture needs any kind of clarification, please feel free to. Is that a hand I see raised? Is that Triana? Is that a hand that you're raising?
No,
If
I'm
so,
not.
no?
Sorry. No, I don't have a raised hand. Sorry.
Oh, okay, that might be me here. Yeah, that's me. I'm sorry. As I'm saying, does anyone need point of clarification on these different names? Anyone? Should I just continue then? Okay, good. So you guys are good with this. Okay, good. I just wanted to read a commentary by my teacher, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Prabhupada, he writes, because he gives a nice explanation. He says, Duryodhana, after praising the prowess of Bhishma, further considered that others might think that they had been considered less important. So, in his usual diplomatic way, he tried to adjust the situation in the above words. He emphasized that Bhishma Dev was undoubtedly the greatest hero, but he was an old man, because Bhishma is the elder of all the warriors. But that really doesn't play into the fact that he's any less of a warrior. And if you read the Mahabharata and you see the way Bhishma fights in the Mahabharata, it's like dazzling how powerful a warrior he is. But Duryodhana is afraid. Bhishma is going to be affected by his affection for Arjuna and Bhima and Yudhisthira and Nakula and Sahadev, the five Pandava boys. So he's afraid that he's going to be affected by that. So that's why he's trying to do everything that he can to incite both Dronacharya and Bhishma. So if there are no questions, I'll move on to text 12 because we move into a whole other dimension of this history that we're getting here in the first verses of the Bhagavad Gita. 12. Then Bhishma, the great valiant grandsire of the Kuru dynasty, the grandfather of all the fighters, blew his conch shell very loudly, making a sound like the roar of a lion, giving Duryodhana joy. So, conch shell, particular significance. It's comprised of it's called shanka in Sanskrit. Conch shell. Shanka means sun means peace and ka means place. So by the sound vibration of the conch shell, two things are indicated. It's supposed to create a peace environment, and it's also indication of auspiciousness. When the conch shell is blown, like for instance, when Mirabai had her wedding here, I did the wedding ceremony for Mirabai and Devendra. And when they had their wedding ceremony, I blew the conch in order to create, before I did the wedding ceremony, in order to create an environment of peace and auspiciousness. Now, in this particular case, in this particular scenario, certainly it's not for peace because this is a battlefield and this is just prior to the battle. But he wanted to, Bhishma wanted to do, he understood that Duryodhana was a little bit anxious. The first chapter, as I've told you several times, is called Vishada Yoga. It's the yoga of dejection. It's how Arjuna uses his dejection as a catalyst for advancing in yoga, in the practice of yoga, bhakti yoga in particular. Duryodhana is also feeling somewhat dejected. But it doesn't become his dejection, Duryodhana's dejection, does not become a yoga for him. It's not Vishada yoga for him. It's a Vishada yoga for Arjuna. His dejection is a catalyst for him to advance spiritually because he does the right thing. He takes shelter of a very spiritual personality, Krishna. Duryodhana, he's feeling this dejection. He's feeling like, he's not going to win the war because of so many factors that are there. Instead, it does not become yoga for him because he uses his diplomacy and material calculations to try to get beyond his dejection. You see the difference? We're getting two different approaches to the same scenario. The scenario is battle, warfare amongst friends and relatives. But we're getting two different mindset approaches to how to deal with it. The understanding of what they're facing produces dejection in Duryodhana, but he's trying through diplomacy and material manipulation, he's trying to arrange the situation in such a way where he has the upper hand. For Arjuna, Arjuna feels this dejection, so much so that he gives reasons, 4 or 5 different reasons why he's not going to fight. But he deals with his dejection in a different way. He seeks out, as Joshua mentioned, he seeks out a confidant. And the confidant that he seeks out happens to be Krishna. And in the context of the Gita, Krishna is considered God. So he goes, he deals with his dejection. It's called yoga because his approach to dealing with his dejection is a connecting force. It's a yoga. It unifies or connects or links up Arjuna to the Supreme, to Krishna and to Krishna's knowledge and understanding. So that's why for Arjuna, his vishada or his dejection, his feeling of dejection is a yoga. It's a catalyst. And that's for us in this world. We can approach the varying dilemmas that we may face in life in one of two ways. We could try to deal with it in a way that we try to understand how we can manipulate the material world in our favor and try to have things arranged in such a way that it favors us and gets us into a better position, or we can take the route of Arjuna. So it's the Arjuna path to dejection, or it's the Duryodhana path to dejection. And Duryodhana is thinking, how can I manipulate the situation, arrange the situation so it's in my favor? Whereas Arjuna is saying, how can I take shelter? Let me take shelter of great spiritual authority and get some deep and profound insight on how I can deal with this. And that is our choice. That is one of the universal principles of the Bhagavad Gita. That is the choice that we can make also when we face our various life dilemmas. So, so that's the one. The Bhishma. He wants to encourage Duryodhana, so he blows his conch shell. The conch shell is the sound, produces the sound vibration of auspiciousness and powerful. It's a powerful blow of the conch shell. The conch shell is also white, and white stands for purity. We'll talk about that later on. So the conch shell that Bhishma is blowing is Bhishma's attempt to pacify the dejection and anxiety that Duryodhana is experiencing. Then text 13, after that, the conch shells, drums, bugles, trumpets, and horns were all suddenly sounded, and the combined sound was tumultuous. So this is a response to Bhishma. Now, Bhishma was allowed to blow the conch shell first because we have a different mindset in terms of Arjuna and Krishna. They are Dharma. They are following Dharma. So it is the etiquette to give due respect to someone that is respectable. Bhishma, being senior, is and being a great warrior and being also advanced, very advanced spiritually. Krishna wants Bhishma to be the first to blow the conch shell. So he allows, out of the etiquette of respect and honor for Bhishma in his position, he allows Bhishma to blow the conch first. And then there's a whole following of the horns and drums and bugles and coming from that side as a response to Bhishma. Then what happens is once that happens, now it's unique and noteworthy that the word that is used for Bhishma's blowing of the conch is powerful. Bhishma blows this, and it's tumultuous, powerful. Now, and it's also the blowing of the conch shell is also considered a challenge by Bhishma to the opposing army, which is the Pandavas, Arjuna, Krishna, etc. So it's like the first challenge, the throwing down of the gauntlet. So then we get 14, text 14. On the other side, both Lord Krishna and Arjuna, stationed on a great chariot drawn by white horses, sounded their transcendental conch shells. Now, it's important to note that in relationship to Bhishma's conch, it's tumultuous or powerful. That's the Sanskrit word that's used. And this, when it describes when Krishna sounded their conch shells, it's called transcendental. So it has a different effect. It's powerful, but it's spiritual. And it also has a very disheartening effect on the opposing army, Duryodhana's army, because of Krishna blowing the conch and Arjuna blowing the conch. And the word that's used is divyam, the transcendental sound vibration, which is far more powerful than a material sound vibration. Are we good so far? Does anyone have any questions or comments? Anything for clarification? No? Okay. We'll continue on text 15. Lord Krishna blew his conch shell called Panchajanya. Arjuna blew his, the Devadatta, and Bhima, the voracious eater and performer of Herculean tasks, blew his terrific conch shell called Ambra. Even their conch shells have names. Arjuna's bow has a name. They're very, very personal when it comes to, their weapons, their paraphernalia. They all have names, and there's stories behind each and every one of these conch shells. But I can't get into that. That will have to go into the Mahabharata to get them. Right now, we'll just focus on the Gita. And you notice the word that's used in relationship to Bhima. I said Bhi means terrifying, right? So the word that's used, the adjective that's used for Bhima's conch shell is terrific, terrifying, terrific. That kind of power that's there in Bhima and even his paraphernalia. So there's also something to note here. There is a mention that Krishna is stationed on a great chariot drawn by white horses. Now, in the Upanishads are pretty straightforward. They are somewhat cryptic in trying to understand the verses of the Upanishads. But there are metaphors that come out of there. So the metaphor that comes out of this particular verse there is the chariot and the white horses. There's 5 white horses. The chariot, the metaphor that's used for this is the body is considered a chariot. We mentioned earlier on in our verses that there is a journey of life, and we mentioned the 4 wheels of that journey, if you remember, and that is artha, kama, dharma, and moksha. And that means kama means gratification, artha means economic development, dharma means how to act responsibly, and moksha means liberation. We talked a little bit about how they're the 4 wheels of the journey of life, but also in keeping with the concept of the journey of life, we have the metaphor that's used in the Upanishads in relationship to the chariot and the chariot driver. So the chariot, everyone knows what a chariot is, right? Okay. So the chariot is used in this metaphor as the body. The chariot, the horses that pull the chariot, the 5 horses, the 5 white horses that pull the chariot of the body are the senses, the 5 senses, the sense of seeing, smelling, tasting, touching, and hearing. Those 5 horses are the 5 senses that pull the chariot. What does that mean? Well, our senses are the way the internal relates with the external world. It's the way we interact with the world around us. So the chariot are pulled by the 5 senses. Now, if there is no controlling factor in terms of the 5 senses, then what happens is the senses go in all different directions. They're uncontrollable and they pull us in varying directions. Yoga is meant to control the senses. One of the principal features of yoga is to bring control of the senses and the 6th sense, which is called the mind. So the body is the chariot, the 5 horses are the senses. They're white because the senses, the white indicates purity. The senses can be pure. The senses can be pure. It's dependent upon utilization. And that's the whole principle of yoga, how we can use our senses to advance ourselves in life. So if we keep the senses pure, then that means then the chariot of the body will be kept in a very purified direction. And what keeps the senses running straight and running accordingly? The reins. The reins are compared to the mind. The mind, according to Bhagavad Gita, in the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, the mind is our best friend or our worst enemy. We discussed that before. When the mind is controlled, as Patanjali points out in the Yoga Sutras, and we control our mind, right? We have yamas and niyamas, and we have pranayama, and we have asana, all means for controlling the body and the mind. When we do that, then we are able to go straight on our course. And if we have the destination of purification and eventually moksha or liberation or freedom from the shackles of the material world, then we'll be able to do that by controlling the mind. The mind controls the 5 senses, keeps us going on a straight course, a straight and narrow course. The driver of the chariot is the intellect. The intelligence, if the intelligence is purified, the intelligence controls the mind. It is a greater force, it is a subtler force and a greater force, and it can control the mind. The intelligence has the ability of discernment. The intelligence tells us which way to go. Don't do that, do this. This is a better way. In terms of all of our functions, in terms of our hearing function, our seeing function, our smelling function, our tasting function, our touching function, the intelligence can tell us what are the best objects of senses to interact with. And according to the principles of yoga, if we can, and Ayurveda, if we can adjust our life or create a lifestyle that is controlled, then what happens is our lifestyle can be the source of purification, and it will help us to control the mind, and will give us the intelligence. Will be able to choose things properly in the proper way. In other words, we have a choice of what to eat. In Ayurveda, you see, your eating can be your source of illness or can be your source of health. It's a matter of how you control the lifestyle and the process of eating in your lifestyle. So when you go see an Ayurvedic physician, there's two things that they focus in on. Number one is your lifestyle. My wife, as you know, most of you know, is an Ayurvedic doctor. So when she sits down with her patient, she interviews them, gets a history. She's also a medical doctor, so she kind of combines the two. But she gets a history. What time do you go to bed? What's the last meal that you eat? All of these different factors in terms of your lifestyle. And then she can deal with and she could assess your condition. For instance, let's say you go to her for insomnia. Probably the first question she'll ask is, what time do you go to bed? Because even according to research, the best times to sleep, the most enriching times to sleep, are between 8 and 12. My teacher, he only slept 4 hours every day, and usually they were between the hours of 8 and 12. Sometimes he lectured, so he wouldn't get to bed until 9 or 10, but he still got up at 12 or 1 in the morning. He still only slept 3 or 4 hours. That's not for everyone to do that. According to our constitution and our spiritual development, it's not recommended. What's recommended is to find balance. Ayurveda deals with balance. So we find the balance. So an Ayurvedic doctor will help us do that. And that will put us into balance. And when we find our specific and unique balance, then it becomes a lifestyle choice. And when we're in that zone, that balance zone, then things are easier to control. Our mind is easier to control. Our senses are easier to control. There is conditioning and condition. The condition we're in and the conditioning that we place ourselves, which causes the condition that we're in. So when an Ayurvedic doctor looks at you, they look at your condition, but also the lifestyle that causes the conditioning that you're experiencing. How are you sleeping? How are you eating, and when are you eating, and in what mindset are you eating in? If you're eating in a very troubled mindset, it affects your digestion. And according to Ayurveda, most of the problems that we experience stems from poor digestion. So that is why we need intelligence there to determine what is the balanced lifestyle that we can lead. What are the things that we must reject, and what are the things we must embrace? And when we do that with proper guidance, and we do that, then we see the mind becomes controlled and peaceful. Yogas chitta vritti narodaha. It's able to become calm. And thus, when we calm the mind, we make the mind peaceful. The senses, the horses, are also in obedience. And the driver is the intelligence, the passenger is the soul, the Atma. So this analogy, which is mentioned in various commentators, in relationship to this verse, gives us the whole 9 yards of what we are to do if we were to practice yoga. See the body as your chariot, as your vehicle. Control the horses of the senses and purify them so they're white, the white horses, the pure. Use the reins to keep them under control. The mind, the intelligence is the driver, gives direction through the reins, through the mind, to the senses. And ultimately, the Atma, or the soul, experiences peace and is able to advance spiritually. So this particular verse, besides its significance in relationship to the setting that we're getting, the introduction to the various warriors that we're getting introduced to, also gives us a lesson in life. Bhagavad Gita is like that throughout. It has its course, and it also has between the lines that will help us in terms of our life. Any questions thus far? Anyone need any points clarified what I just mentioned? You're all good?
I've loved
Josh?
everything you've just shared with us. I feel like that this is like uh, for me, the bulk of the message in a way of the book almost. um,
Yeah.
yeah, and I'm just wondering if there's anything reference to fasting in there. Uh,
Well, according to Ayurveda, um, yes, there is fasting, but you have to know your constitution because there's three primary dosas, Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. And if you're in predominantly one dosha, and you fast, it'll have adverse effects. So you can only minimally fast, whereas like a kapha person can fast and it doesn't affect them. So when we talk about fasting, we should understand, in consultation with an Ayurvedic physician, so that you know your dosha. And even besides knowing your dosha, you should understand what's in balance because you can be a vata or a vata, like I'm a pitta vata, which means I have predominant fire and I have a lot of air there. But what's imbalanced in me? I could have a kapha imbalance, and that will produce a whole other set of symptoms. So it's really important to note when you want to do fasting. Like I know some people fast on fruit, for a succession of days. For a vata, that's not so good. Some people just fast on water. Some people fast from grains. There's a whole series of fasting, and it's really, really important to know A, what is your dosha? And B, what is imbalanced in your system? And then from that understanding, take on a fast that will facilitate bringing the imbalance back into balance. So
Mhm.
Ayurveda is very unique in its approach in that it's very individualistic. And, it's not like go on this fruit fast or go on this water fast or go on this fast, etc. Sometimes it may work, but sometimes it may cause damage. And that's why, according to Ayurveda, be in knowledge before you fast,
Mhm.
so that if you make the effort to fast, it will have, it will facilitate healing and by bringing you back into balance and not throwing you further out of balance.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. I mean, I have fasted before when I was younger. I haven't fasted in many, many years, and I just turned 50, and the changes in the body are, evident with the digestion and so on. And I've been wanting to do a fast, but it seems that there's well, I haven't for reasons, so that's why I'm asking because the body's changing as we age, and so I'm sensing I need some guidance. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be wise. A real safe fast is if you just eat khichdi. Do you know what khichdi is?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's rice and yellow mung dal.
Mm-hmm.
You make like a stew, and you make a plain khichdi. When you go to an Ayurvedic retreat and you do a panchakarma, a cleansing, that's usually the kind of diet they put you on.
Okay.
Because number one, khichdi has everything you need.
Mm.
So it will continue to nourish the body, but it's also not that difficult to digest.
Mm-hmm.
So, khichdi is a safe way to try to bring the body into balance. But it is best that you get some consultation.
Yeah.
My wife does telemedicine consultation,
Okay.
over Zoom. So,
Okay.
if you're ever interested in that, getting a consultation from her, just let me know,
Yeah. Okay.
and she can do that for you.
Thank you.
And there is mention in the Bhagavad Gita, um, Krishna says one should not eat too much nor eat too little, sleep too much nor sleep too little. So
Mm-hmm.
Krishna gives an indication that what is important is balance.
Mm.
And what is your balance. My balance may be different than your balance.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, I may be able to sleep 5 hours and be fine, or conversely, I may sleep 5 hours and be a basket case.
Mm-hmm.
I have to know what is my balance. What do I feel good in doing? So that's another important component in finding your balance, and that will help us to to progress in terms of our material progression. When we talk about material progression, we talk about trying to find the lifestyle that will bring us, a peaceful state, a state of mind and body that is conducive for our practice, our spiritual practice, our yogic practice.
Thank you.
And do you have a question, Chuck? No, I can only see part of you. It looks like your arm is up.
No, sorry. Yeah, no, no question.
Oh, okay. All right. Anyone else have a question
I had a
regarding what we're
question.
talking about? Yeah,
Well, it's kind
Trish.
of off topic. In the beginning, I went back and read the verses so I could see the pronunciation of the names again. And when I was going
Uh-huh.
through and reading some of the verses, it talks about the Kshatriya and how they can't refuse a challenge to fight or gamble.
Right,
And they talk about
right.
gambling twice. What are they talking about?
Gambling?
Mhm.
Yeah, there's actual Kshatriyas have concessions. Each particular personality type that's mentioned in the Gita, Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Sudra, or the intellectual teacher inclined, the warrior, the mercantilistic person, the one who serves humanity, they all come with some concessions. So for a Kshatriya, because they're in passion and they're fighting, they got all of this energy. There is a concession where um, they can gamble. And one of the dilemmas that's created in the Mahabharata is when Yudhisthira, one of the five Pandavas, loses the gambling match. Of course, he's cheated. He loses because he's cheated, but it's actually considered gambling is considered like warfare. It's like a battle. You know, you're opposing someone in a chess match or dice match or something like that. So they're allowed to do it. A Brahmin is not allowed to gamble. Usually a Brahmin follows principles. He doesn't gamble. He doesn't take any he or she, Brahmin refers to both genders. They're not, they're not inclined to take any kind of intoxication. They're usually vegetarian in diet. They only eat vegetarian foods, and they're usually very, very regulated in their sex. They're usually, if they're married, they're very, very, what do they call it? Monogamous. There's no, on the other hand, a Kshatriya can have more than one wife and he can produce many children. He's very powerful. He has a very powerful demeanor. Um, it's very hard for us to understand what they're talking about because in this day and age, we don't have that so much. We don't, what Krishna is talking about in the Bhagavad Gita, these personality types, is kind of lost in the age of Kali Yuga. We're all pretty much not in that category. So it's not that clear and that simple. We may, be inclined to study, but yeah, we really like, we really like our beer, or we really like to go out and party with the opposite sex or something like that. It's very hard for us, to be that fixed and that determined. So yeah, that's what it means by gambling. It actually means that the Kshatriyas, the warriors, are allowed to do so.
That makes sense.
Is there any other questions? I think we've run out of time, right? 8:07, yeah. We'll continue text 16 and 18 next. So I address any questions, comments, observations, etc. Anything you would like to speak up on. I'll allow some time for that. Anyone? I know it's a little. I'm giving you, and if you don't want the version that I'm giving you some really in-depth understanding for each verse. So when you come out of hearing this course, you'll have a really comprehensive overview of Bhagavad Gita. If you don't want, if you feel like it's too slow for you, please speak up. I will not be offended. I will go with my audience and I can move faster if you like and not get into the nitty-gritty details of the verses. But let me tell you, you won't really hear this so much except from people who know the Gita and want to convey the external meaning and the nuances, the in between the lines. I am totally open to my audience. Whatever you guys want to hear, I'm there for you. And yes, is that Joanna? Yeah.
Yeah, for one, personally, I appreciate all your insights and it's offering a lot to me personally. But Trish, I had a question for you. You mentioned something last week with regard to it's Krishna's in the clouds. I'm paraphrasing. I don't remember exactly what you said. But then today you mentioned um about gambling and where are you reading that? Because I'm
In the
sorry.
book, it
Yeah.
has, when they talk about the different personality types, that's where they talk about the gambling. But when it's in the introduction where they talk about seeing Krishna in the
Okay.
sky.
Okay. Okay. So you don't just read the verse, you actually read also the paragraph underneath it.
Yeah, I've read up until the point where
Yep.
we are today.
Thank
And I
you.
actually went through and read a little again over the verses because it
Okay.
helps to see the Sanskrit words again after listening to the pronunciation. So
Okay.
it helped me remember the names a lot better too.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Just to, if you have that Gita,
I
the
do.
commentary, yeah, the commentary is very, I mean, everything, most everything I'm getting is from the commentary, really.
Well,
I'm
that's kind of why
paraphrasing.
I didn't read the commentary because I wanted to hear your rendition of it. But I will
And
start.
yeah. And what reading the commentary after you hear me will
Mhm.
reinforce what you've heard from me, because a lot of what I say is in the commentary.
Mm,
Because one thing to understand about the Gita, it has been over the course of time, it is tradition within the tradition of the Gita for those great saints and scholars to comment on the Gita for the benefit of humanity. So it's really helpful, just like it's the same tradition in the Yoga Sutras.
mm,
If you read the Yoga Sutras without commentary,
right.
you're really going to lose a lot, or you're going to be prone to speculation on what that sutra means. So there are five or six commentators, accepted commentators of the sutras that should be read in conjunction with the sutras, and it'll help clarify what the point that Patanjali is making. Did you have a comment, John?
Yeah. So the four personality types, are those like the caste system in Hinduism?
Okay, very good point, and I'm glad you brought it up because there's two approaches. The caste system is a bastardization of what Krishna is talking about. That was done primarily by corrupt Brahmins in order to steal their position as the head of society. The followers of the Gita don't, if you read that particular verse, and I'll read it for you to show you exactly what I'm talking about. If you read what Krishna is saying in that verse, it's not what the Hindu perspective of caste system is, because Krishna says it. Um, yeah, here it is. According to the three modes of material nature and the work associated with them. So Krishna says not that you're born into your position, like you're born a Brahmin. Krishna is saying, no, you have to demonstrate that you are Brahminical by nature, by your work, the way, the inclination. For instance, someone that would be Brahminical by nature would be someone who likes to study, someone who, let's put it in context of modern day, someone who likes to do martial arts or sports or something like that would be more of a Kshatriya nature. Like in my uh, astrological chart, there's Kshatriya all over it. The astrologer told me, yeah, I was practically speaking, from childhood, I was an athlete. It was my inclination. And I also like to manage things, to organize things. But Brahmin doesn't like to do that. A Brahmin is more pacifist. A Brahmin is more, sit back and observe society and give their intellectual and deep spiritual, profound insight in the matters. So that's a very good question. When you talk about caste system, Bhagavad Gita is not condoning caste system. Caste system means you're born as a Sudra, and that's what you are. And you can't elevate yourself. Gita does not. If you're born in a poverty-stricken family, but you show signs of intellectualism, and then you can be a Brahmin. Yeah, that's Gita's version of what's being mentioned here. That you have to, and that's the duty of the parent. That's what the parent's duty is. Observe your son. My wife and I, that's what we've done with our child since his birth. We've just observed him and tried to guide him. My wife may have in her head, she wants him to be a doctor. But he categorically dismisses that. He says, I'm not going to be a doctor. So, okay, now he's saying that he's 10 years old. Okay, that's fine. My eldest boy, I have a 33-year-old boy, same thing. He told me, I'm not going to be a teacher like you, but he's very teacher oriented. I mean, he likes instructing people. So he's a performer. He's a magician and a comedian. But within his whole shtick, he's teaching people, how to do it. So it comes out, he's chosen his path, fine, and follow it, but his nature still comes out. And my son, my youngest boy, we're still analyzing, him, but we see he has very artistic sensibilities. So we're encouraging him. He's a good musician. He's a great artist, and we're encouraging him. Even though my wife would like for him to be a scientist, like naturally, but and he may develop along those lines. But right now, we're not pushing him. We're just letting him grow and develop, and that is what Krishna is talking about. And that's the distinction between caste system and the word that's used in the Gita is varnashram. That means your tendency according to your psychological nature and your inclination and the station of life that you choose to be in. Which means there's a very small minority of people that will be celibate monks. Very, very small percentage. And 95% of humanity will get married and have children. Neither are wrong. If your inclination is to be celibate and a monk and to dedicate your life that way, that's fine. Go with that. But if you, like most people, you want to have a partner in life, you want to have children, then you go with that. And Gita encourages that. It's like the whole thing you'll see in the second chapter with Arjuna. He's seeking to renounce his nature. And Krishna tells him that's not dharma. That's not what you're supposed to do. That's not going to bring you peace if you renounce your warrior nature. What will bring you peace is if you fight. But a Kshatriya, a real Kshatriya, fights to protect people, not to exploit people. So what we have here, we have Duryodhana, who is exploitative by nature. And therefore, Krishna tells Arjuna, you can't allow Duryodhana to usurp the throne. You can't do that. because he is trying to exploit citizenry rather than protect citizens. The Pandavas protected everything they did in the course of their life, from young boys all the way up to young men, which they are now at the time of the Battle of Kurukshetra. I think their calculation has been something like they're 35 years old right now. Everything that they've done in their life has been to protect people. And Duryodhana, everything that he's done was for his own benefit, was self-interested. And that's why Krishna tells Arjuna, oh no, that's not Dharma. You allowing everybody to live or thinking that they're going to live. He said, that's another thing. Their destiny is to die. And you getting out of the battle is not going to change their destiny. But the point being to him, his dharma, his duty is his nature and his obligation and responsibility to society. And that's how we feel peaceful. You see, with Mirabai, obviously, her nature is music. Her means of communicating her message is through the medium of music, right? She wouldn't go through the austerities that she goes through to do what she does if it wasn't her nature. You find, and that's, people ask me, how do I find my Dharma? You find what you love to do. You do what you love and love what you do. And when you can find that position, to me, I was always rejecting teaching. You know, I always found myself in a position of teaching. And then finally I realized, what am I doing? That's my Dharma. My Dharma is to teach. I have an ability to take a subject matter and make it clear. You know, that's why am I doing that? And even through the other thing, I do kirtan, but my kirtan also becomes my message, my teaching. So that is what we do. That's how we do, and that's how we find peace in our life. Don't, yeah. Anything else anyone would like to say? Any comments? No? Well, thank you very much. It was joyful.
Thank you, Lakshmi.
Thank you so
Bye.
much.
Mirabai, Haribo, Mirabai.
Haribo.
Thank you. All glories to all of you. I hope that your upcoming week is healthy, happy, and holy. You know, and feel free if something pops in your mind during the course of the week, some question comes up, feel free to contact me. Shoot me an email or a Facebook message, and don't hesitate. I'm here for you. It is my joy to be at your service in this capacity. So thank you
So much.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna.
Okay.
Hare
Okay.
Krishna.
We'll
Namaste.
see you next week. Next week, same time, same station.